Alright guys, welcome back to 243 Outdoors. This is Josh. So lately I've been getting a lot of requests on ballistic calculators. So today I've got my screen hooked up here so you can see what I see on my computer, and we're going to go through the ballistic calculator on Hornady.com. Many manufacturers such as Federal, Winchester, Hornady all have ballistic calculators available on their websites. So depending on what you're shooting, you might choose one of theirs. I personally like to use one called JBM Ballistics. It's a little more detailed than this, but for a simple use, we're just going to use this. The Hornady calculator seems to work very well out to 1,000 yards in my experiences, but when you get past 100 yards, the data starts to be coming quite a bit off, I feel like. So that's why I've kind of used the JBM Ballistics, and that's the data I've used out to the 1 mile shot, and it seems to be pretty close. So we're at Hornady.com, and the first thing we're going to do is go up to the calculators and click on it. Hornady has a couple different ones. They have a standard, and they have what they call the 4DOF, and we're just going to use the standard today. That'll work for most people. We're going to scroll down here, and you can name this. You can name this for what round you're using. If you're using like a 6.5 Creedmoor 140 grain, you can type that in. So for today's data, I feel like I'm going to use the 223 73 grain ELD. So let's type in Savage Axis 223 73 grain ELD. Underneath that is says Show Advanced Calculator Features, and we do want to click that. Next line says Units. We're going to keep that at standard. We shot this round out to 1,000 yards the other day, so let's go ahead and drag it over to 1,000 yards. The interval, you can do whatever you want. Some of my targets are set up on 50 yards, so this will give you data for every 50 yards. The ballistic coefficient is basically a number that represents how aerodynamic the round is, kind of at short. If you're doing reloading, generally the box of bullets has this information on it. You can also search it on the internet. So the 73 grain ELD is a 0.398, so we'll enter that. The higher the number, like 0.500, 0.600, is a more aerodynamic number, and the lower, like 0.100s, are very low ballistic coefficients, low aerodynamics. The velocity, if you have a chronograph and can put the exact velocity in, that is great. If you do not know your velocity, you can guess. You can go to your reloading manual and look at the grains you used and run it up and kind of get a ballpark figure. So for this round, I'm pretty much at 2650. Next line is the weight of the projectile is 73 grains. The drag coefficient, there's a couple different ways of figuring this. There's G1s and G7s. For this purpose, we'll use G1. The firearm, this will be the input on your firearm. Generally, most people have a 100-yard zero, so you'll enter that. A slide height, I don't really mess with that. You can if you want to, but that's the height that your scope is above the bore. That'll change a few little things, but for the most part, the 1.5 works. Shooting angle is 0. The environmental factors, you can figure wind if you want to. Say we'll just put a 5-mile-an-hour wind. The wind is a 90-degree angle, so that'll be a full value crosswind. The altitude will be the altitude of basically where you're shooting. The town that I live in is 457 feet above sea level. The weather factors, the pressure, temperature, humidity. You can call like a local time and temperature and get this information. You can also go to like weather.com, enter your zip code, and it'll give you current conditions. We've been down in the freezer lately a lot, so it's actually in the 40s today, but let's enter in, what am I looking for? About 20 degrees. That's what it was the other day when we was shooting. Humidity, we'll just leave it at 78. Display fields, we'll leave all these clicked, and we'll hit calculate. So basically when you see me out shooting, I print off a piece of paper, and this is basically what I'm printing out. This is my information for each yardage that I shoot. I have a 100-yard target, which we're 100-yard zero, so that don't really mean anything. We know that our velocity at 100 yards has dropped from 2650 down to 2416. We have 964 foot-pounds of energy. At 100 yards with a 5-mile-an-hour crosswind, we're looking about a ½ an inch of wind drift. So my next targets are at 250 yards. So if we have a MOA scope, it is calling for 3.6 minutes of adjustment, which equals 9.3 inches of drop. If you have a mil-dot scope, it is calling for 1 mil a drop. So on your scope, you would dial 10 clicks or 1 mil. If you have holdovers, you can also hold over these distances. I have a 400-yard target, so our info at 400 is 1,786 feet per second, 517 foot-pounds of energy. The bullet is dropping 36.8 inches. On my quarter-inch dial, it is 8.8 MOA, so that'll be 8 3/4 clicks, or you could round it up to 9 if you wanted to. These values are fairly close, depending on, I mean, they're exact if you get the exact data in there, as far as your velocity, weather conditions, and environmental factors. Mil-dot scope, you're at 2.6 mils, so that would be 26 clicks up. We'll scroll on down here to the 1,000 yards. We're at 1,016 feet per second, so it has gone subsonic. Based on my elevation at that temperature, I think about 1060s speed of sound at my elevation, so it has gone subsonic. It's dropping 504.2 inches. I'll divide that out for you here real quick. 504.2 divided by 12. So the bullet is dropping approximately 42 feet at this distance. 48.1 minutes is about the what you'd have to dial to make a 1,000-yard shot. So if you don't know your velocity when you're reloading in your book and you say loaded like I did, I believe, what was this, 23.9 grains, and you'll follow it up and you'll get a ballpark estimate of, say, like 2,700 feet per second. So we'll go here and we'll type in 2,700 feet per second. We'll leave all our data the same and we'll hit calculate. So we can go out to a known distance, say 500 yards, and we'll dial 12.5 and we'll shoot. Depending on where the bullet hits, if it hits the top of the target, it's not dropping as much as we thought, or if it hits the bottom of the target. And what we'll do is we'll take this, we'll basically shoot until we hit a bullseye, and we'll write down what our data is. If it took, say, 13.1 and it called for 12.5, we're going to adjust our data, our velocity down to, say, 2650, and then I hit calculate, and it will be 13.1, and we can basically figure our velocity this way. This is how I've done it in the past, and it seems to work pretty good. But basically, you just want to go out and confirm your data. The 10 jug milk jug shoot, 10 jug challenge I done the other day, I shot every 100 yards out to 1,000 yards. I took the data for the 140 ELD and I entered it in, and I have the little thing actually printed on my scope cap. Basically, every elevation out to 1,000 yards was very close. My data was basically spot on. Most of my misses were slight windage issues or just very minimal elevation, but it's close enough for the kind of shooting I do. So hopefully this answers some questions as far as ballistic calculators. They are very simple to use. You just have to input the correct data and you'll get good info. I have several of these sheets printed out for different rounds, different temperatures, and it works very well. It takes a lot of the guesswork out. It saves you a lot of ammo, and it can be quite fun when you're shooting out, say, 500 yards. You just got to look and see, 12.5 dialed up on the scope, first shot, bang, you're on target. So, like I said, hope this helps answer some questions for you guys. If you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. Fairly simple. The best thing to do is just get on here and play with it and print you out some sheets and go out and shoot and see what happens. So that's going to wrap up this video today. I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you later.